1645, and today we are in Pimperne. Pimperne was the birthplace of Robert Frampton, who was born in Pimperne on February the 26th, 1622, and he went on later to serve as the master at Glenham School. On the map. Now, where is he?
He is just below.
There he is, Robert Frampton. Now, Robert Frampton became the Bishop of Gloucester, but he was at the Battle of Hampden Hill on August the 4th, 1645, and he was up here with his 4 brothers. Now, they were all wounded in the battle, and one of his brothers actually had to crawl back to St Mary's Church, where the prisoners were taken after the Battle of Hampden Hill, and Cromwell took the prisoners back to St Mary's Church. Now, late in the evening, his sister came out here to find the bodies of the brothers because they feared the worst. They thought they were all killed, but they weren't. They were actually held and shot in church, so they were released next day. There is an account of it in Robert Frampton's biography, and it states, Frampton and his 4 brothers have been in the engagement with Cromwell's dragoons on Hampden Hill. His brothers all wounded, one so bad he had to be carried back to the St Mary's Church, now being used as the jail for the club prisoners. Fearing the worst, their sister spent 2 hours searching by lantern on the hill for her dead brothers. As would have it, they survived. All 4 of her brothers survived the battle. They were released from St Mary's the next day. So that's an account of Robert Frampton at the Battle of Hampden Hill. He would have been here with Thomas Brevel, and he was one of the leading ministers up here in the battle. But there's another note, because later on he moved to London, he was preaching in London, he went to Aleppo at some stage in 1655, I think it was. But Samuel Pepys witnessed Robert Frampton at the pulpit, and there is an account of it, and it says, "To my great joy, I think the best sermon for goodness in orator that I ever heard in my life. The truth is, he preaches the most like an apostle that ever I have heard of in a man." Frampton and the Clubmen map on Hampden Hill. Standish. Now, he became the Dean of Gloucester in 1673, and he became the Bishop of Gloucester in 1681. But we've come here today to look at this church because he's buried here, and we all know Robert Frampton from the Battle of Hampden Hill, where he stood side by side with Thomas Brevel, and was locked in the church with Thomas Brevel in Shroton. But we've come to Gloucester and this church here, and we're going to go inside and look at his grave.
He saw his days out here, didn't he?
He saw his days out here, yeah.
And he lived quite a long time. He was 1708.
He lived
was it? 1708?
from 1622 to 1708,
Okay.
the 25th of the revolution of 1688, Frampton found himself in an intolerable position. Although he had protested against the Romanizing practices of King James, he yet could not take an oath of allegiance to William and Mary until James should release him from his previous oath. So he became the leader of the non-jurors in the country. Clergy, for conscience sake, suffered ejection from their livings. Frampton was dispossessed of the bishopric of Gloucester, but was allowed to live at Standish until his death in 1708.
You know, people had a lot of respect for him, which is why they let him stay, wasn't it? I was reading. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he paid £400 towards the rectory here when he
Yes.
helped build a place just outside Gloucester, which was a fortification for the Civil War. But I can't. We can drive over there. It's
Yes.
up the Vines, isn't it?
Yes,
The Vines. It's a sconce. I think it was a manor built by the Abbot of Gloucester. He was rebuilding it, and then he lost his money and had to leave. What we're going to do now is we're going to go inside the church in Standish, and we're going to look at where Robert Frampton is buried, because he's just buried to the north side, left side.
No, the north of the altar.
The north of the altar. And he didn't preach from the altar, he had to preach from the step.
Chancel step.
Chancel step, because he wouldn't preach from the altar. But we'll go inside and have a look. So follow me. Standish Church, yep, and in 1645 Robert Frampton was fighting on Hamerden Hill with Thomas Prevail, but in 1685 he was in this church in Standish in Gloucestershire, and he was preaching from that step in the chancel behind me and not from the altar. But we're going to walk up here now and look at where he was buried. And we've just been talking to the lady down there, and she thinks this is the original place where he was buried. Because a lot of these graves have been moved, but she thinks this is actually where he was buried, Robert Frampton. Standish, where Robert Frampton was buried, and we're in the parish of Hynham, over, and behind me is a sconce, and it's just outside Gloucester. And Robert Frampton was going to rebuild a manor house that was here after the Civil War, which was badly damaged by three sides of parliamentarians and Wallis soldiers that sort of overtook this sconce at the time for the Battle of Gloucester, at the Siege of Gloucester. But after the Civil War, Robert Frampton started rebuilding a manor house that was in that sconce, and he never finished it. I don't really know why. But he didn't finish it, and he ended up in Standish. So, but there you are. But this is where the story ends with Robert Frampton, with his house building schemes around the Shire of Gloucestershire. Gloucestershire and Gloucestershire.
In the parish of Hynham.
That's it. So, but check out the Clubmen site, Clubmen 1645, work in progress. Think of it, I think I know why he didn't finish it, because of I didn't finish this manor house here because of the Glorious Revolution, of course, and he was deselected as the Bishop of deposed.
Dispossessed,
Dispossessed of being the Bishop of Gloucestershire. But I do know that he was working on the Great Hall, and there was a lot of building material here which he paid for, and then he just abandoned it after the Glorious Revolution. And we popped in here from a trip from Worcester. We popped back. We were at Standish before to talk about Robert Frampton. We ended up in 1685, but in 1673 he was the Dean of Gloucester here, so he would have preached from here up to 1681.
8 years.
8 years, because then he was made the bishop. But for 8 years he preached from here, Gloucester Cathedral. And this is the cloisters, and they're doing some practicing in the background there. But we'll go in a minute and we'll show you where he preached from. But yeah, it's nice to be here.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, Robert Frampton, Dean of Gloucester. Gloucester Cathedral, and in 1673 Robert Frampton would have been stood right here, and he preached from here for 8 years. The website, like I said earlier, Clubmen in 1645, work in progress.